Ben Edgington is the founder and lead product owner of Teku, an Ethereum 2.0 client at Consensys. It's been a week since Ethereum switched from proof of work to proof of stake, and Ben has been heavily involved in the process. We start our conversation by having a look at the aftermath of the merge. But first, let's hear more about Ben's background and how he got into crypto.
Before going to me, I want to start just by saying this was a huge effort by hundreds of devs, and I've ended up talking a lot about it in different media, but actual work was done by a huge army, decentralized, distributed army of devs across the world from all different teams and different backgrounds, and that we were able to deliver this merge from such an environment was an incredible feat, and I'm very, very proud of that, and humbled to be part of it. So I played a very, very small role. I essentially write about Ethereum, and I guide the team, but they don't let me write much code anymore. So my role has been relatively small. But it's been terrific to be part of it. I got into Ethereum specifically, crypto more generally, about 6.5 years ago, towards the start of 2016. I'd spent 20 years working for a huge Japanese multinational, and as is the way in these companies, that when I turned 40, I had to sort of become a manager and do manager things. I was wearing a suit and a tie for a living, and ended up modestly senior in fintech stuff that we were doing, sort of information security mostly, and had a head of engineering role in Hitachi Europe, dealing with a lot of banks in the city of London and so forth. And there came a point in early 2016 when all our salespeople were coming back from meetings with clients and prospects and saying that the only thing anyone wants to talk about is something called blockchain. Can you help us out? Can you find out what it is? And so I dug into blockchain things. I read the Bitcoin white paper. I read everything I could about Ethereum, and was gripped. It was immediately fascinated by the potential, by the way it tried to tackle problems in a very different way from what we were doing, and drawn to this community of devs. I started reading everything. In those days, you could spend an hour on Reddit and you knew everything that was going on. I mean, very different from now. But I was able to start contributing to a couple of projects, just a few lines of code, and found everybody was so welcoming and just drew me in. So I was spending all evening, all weekend, hacking away at Ethereum things, learning everything I could. Eventually, I made my passion my work, which I don't necessarily recommend. And I joined Consensys towards the end of 2017. And I've been there ever since, in the protocol development team.
At Consensys, did you immediately start working on what was called ETH 2.0?
I actually joined initially to work on private network things. We were very big into enterprise Ethereum at that point, and my sort of initial role was working on Quorum, which is an enterprise Ethereum client and protocol. And I spent 3 months or so on that, but my heart just was not in it. I just was energized by the public network stuff, the mainnet stuff, and just wasn't really engaged with the enterprise Ethereum things. So I went to the business after 3 months and I said, look, I have to work on mainnet stuff, and I understand the context and the business context things. And, if this is the end of my time with protocols with Pegasus as it was then so be it. But they were so positive and welcomed this development, and I was very supportive. So, they gave me the blessing to do that. And I spent the next 2 years building the R&D team within Pegasus. And we built that up to about 25 people, still going strong today. And as part of being in R&D, we started the Teku client. So this was towards the end of 2018 when, the Ethereum roadmap had sort of taken a sharp left turn and had decided to sort of abandon the old roadmap and start fresh with this new beacon chain thing. So September 2018, I was able to assemble a team and we started work on what was to become Teku. It was a research project for the first year. But after a year, we looked at what we had and thought, yeah, this has got some promise. So we moved it over to our product development side and put the sort of rigors of proper product management and product development on it. And I went with the product and became product owner for Teku. So that was, where are we now? That was about 3 years ago. So we've been building that ever since.
What's the difference between Pegasus and Teku?
So Pegasus is now known as Protocols. It's a protocol engineering group within Consensys. We began in 2017 and started small. I mean, when I joined, there were about a dozen of us. We soon built it up to 60 or 70 people, and that's where it is today. And, we're focused on both enterprise and mainnet deliverables. Our primary products now are Teku, which is the consensus client for Ethereum, Besu, which is the execution client for Ethereum, and also for private and enterprise networks. And we have a Web3 signer product, which has a lot of purposes, but a lot of staking pools use it to do signing of transactions in proof of stake Ethereum.
Got it. Okay. So Pegasus is kind of the development hub, and then from there stem different products.
Yes. Yeah. So we have R&D within Pegasus. It's called Protocols now. So Pegasus is a historical name. So we have R&D, about 25 people, and we've got 40 or 45 on the product development side as well.
Okay, cool. And then before we go deeper into Teku itself, let's talk about the merge. What are just like your initial impressions? You kind of gave an overview at the start of the conversation, but just how do you think it went? Was there anything that was surprising to you about it?
What was surprising was just how smoothly it went. It was magnificent. I mean, I think it went far, far better than any of us had expected. And really seemed like a non-event at the time. Everything just kept chugging. Blocks kept being produced, transactions kept being included. It went better than any of the testnet merges that we'd done. And yeah, was as smooth as you would like. I had spent, the previous month trying to set people's expectations, prepare people for 10%, 20%, 30% of validators being offline, of problems and so on. And in the event, none of that occurred, and it just went through beautifully. It was magnificent.
Yeah, I agree. I also was really impressed to see how smoothly it went. Just like for color, where did you watch the merge? And where are you based? Like, what time was it for you? For me, it was like 2 a.m.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was sitting in this chair, sitting at this desk, looking at this camera and screen. Yeah, but things are a little bit different. I had a bottle of champagne here, and was happy to enjoy that. The merge itself was at 7:45 in the morning, my time. Not too bad. I'd got up several hours earlier than I normally would, just in case it was coming a little bit early. I decided not to pull an all-nighter. When it was showing at like 3 a.m., I would have just stayed up, but the time was getting later and later, so I risked getting a bit of sleep, and it worked out pretty well. So, nice. Yeah, it would have been nice to be with everybody. It's always, better to be in person, but we had a good time on the YouTube broadcast. About 80 of us sort of core devs on the call, and I think we had about 40,000 watching at the time, which is amazing given it was like 2 a.m. East Coast time. That was impressive. And then by my lunchtime, like 4 hours later, there were 250,000 views on the YouTube video, which is just astonishing.
Yeah, it was insane. So why do you think that things went so smoothly? Like, just what contributed to this?
Well, we have spent 6 months just testing, really. The design was simplified, right? So we this merge idea came up about 2 years ago. So my colleague in Protocols R&D, Mikhail Kalinin, sort of floated this idea he called the executable beacon chain about 2 years ago, which is if essentially the merge, just bringing the Ethereum blockchain ETH1 as is and just putting it on top of the beacon chain. And looking back, it's now such a really obvious idea. But at the time where we were in the roadmap and the kind of plans we had then were very different. But his idea was just so clearly the right way to get to proof of stake in the least amount of time that we quickly jumped on it. And then about a year and a half ago, we did this Rayonism hackathon, which was very much a proof of concept. Could we hack the clients together just to make this executable beacon chain thing work? And started work in earnest on the clients about a year ago, 6 months or so for implementation on both beacon chain side and on Consensys side, on execution side, and then 6 months of testing, and we tested everything. We ran testnet upgrades, we ran these shadow forks, we did them week after week after week, just doing simulated merge exercises until it was going perfectly. We had the Hive testnets, we have unit tests, we have client tests, everything. So, and a lot of thinking about corner cases and things. And in the event, none of that happened, but you have to sort of hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And, things could have gone wrong. We were ready for things to go wrong, but in the event, it was just smooth.
Accelerate your Web3 journey with Apex Pro. Apex Pro is leading participants with diverse backgrounds and knowledge to a new era of Web3 social trading. Access perpetual contract trades with up to 20x leverage on popular USDC collateralized trading pairs on a powerful trading engine. Scale to accelerate trades and increase usability while preserving your privacy and security. Grow and manage your wealth fairly and transparently with Apex Pro. Ben comes from the traditional software environment where organizations are more structured. What does he think about having a major update like the merge go through without a hitch in a space where working environments are less hierarchical and more distributed?
It's a fascinating study to look into this, and I think sort of organizational sociologists and psychologists will be looking into this for years to come. It would have been a lot easier if we had had a sort of program director and a sort of top-down thing, the sort of thing I used to do for a living, and just sort of able to tell everybody what to do at each time and making a huge Gantt chart and org chart and all of this. We could have delivered something more quickly with fewer resources, I think. But would it have been better? I don't think it would have been better. And so what we see in the distributed development model is that it definitely gives better outcomes. We were able to pivot the roadmap in very positive ways without getting set into one way. We will deliver this thing at all costs. And, 2-3 years later, it turns out to be the wrong thing. And, but you've been so wedded to it, you haven't been able to say, okay, we'll nix that plan and move on to the better plan. The Ethereum community is very willing to pivot and to adopt new technology and work for better outcomes. Which I think has proven to be very effective. The original plan for proof of stake Ethereum was vastly inferior to what we've delivered now. And that's been a huge triumph. And I don't think a top-down structure would have achieved that. And the other thing it does is just bring in brilliant people. There's no hiring plan, and we're not going out headhunting and, putting up job descriptions. But somehow the fascination of working on this thing, of working on something important like this alongside other really smart, motivated people, just attracts brilliant, committed people who are willing to knuckle down, to do the hard work, to do the creative work, to feedback, evaluate, test, and, throw in ideas all the time. And I genuinely think, I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'll keep on saying it for years, this is Ethereum's superpower, this ability to engage a whole community, not just a small number of sort of core devs. And my observation is that the protocols that sort of are delivered from a clean room environment, they come out of a lab and they're sort of perfectly formed, and the dev team says, here you go, here's our protocol, please adopt it. They are not widely adopted. There is no community. There's no nothing attractive about it, nothing that's drawn in people, and they tend not to do well. Whereas Ethereum, for all its mess, its organic nature, the slow conversations and so forth, it is immensely, immensely strong.
I love how there's this new way of work that's emerging, and that Ethereum is probably the strongest example of it. So to you, it seems like, okay, maybe a top-down structure would have been faster, but it wouldn't have been better because it wouldn't have included maybe the feedback, the ideas and input from just a wider community of brilliant developers who are, were able to more seamlessly start working on this project, and then kind of having a structure that allows builders to be flexible and adopt new ideas without having to be set on a specific roadmap that they have to deliver by a specific date, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think it's always tempting, right, to say this would be so much easier if we did, I told everyone what to do and whatever, or it was centrally planned. And it's always tempting to take the shortcut. But then I think we throw away the most important thing. And we are building a network which is decentralized, which is distributed, which has no single point of failure, single leader in it. And we have to model our development around what we're building. How can we build this distributed, global, inclusive system if we are not modeling that behavior ourselves in our own processes? So, that, I think, is the secret sauce.
Awesome. Okay, so now that it's happened, the Ethereum is now working with a proof of stake algorithm. What do you think have been the main, the main effects, or the immediate effects?
Yeah, the most obvious one, the easiest narrative to kind of talk about in the broader world with my relatives and friends and so forth is the environmental narrative. And, for me, this is the most important. I studied climate science back in the day when I was a university researcher. And, for me, this is what first interested me in Ethereum, this commitment to move to proof of stake, because it always seemed to me that proof of work was always going to be an environmental problem. As your blockchain becomes successful, you have to secure more and more value, which means expending more and more power to do that. And that in this world is just not sustainable. So that environmental narrative is clearly the number one benefit of moving to proof of stake. And, people criticize it as a kind of woke ESG thing, but, I'm very far from wokery myself. And, but for me, this is number one. And it's huge. I mean, we've taken an entire country off the global grid in moving to proof of stake, in that respect. The other things are important. They're less important to me personally, but they are important. So I think our security model is superior to proof of work security model. And, maybe we can talk a bit about that. Effectively, it comes down to what does it cost to attack the chain and what defenses do you have against attackers. And I think the weapons in our armory are much better under proof of stake than under proof of work, where your defense is very limited. And the cost to attack the chain is much higher under proof of stake. And then we have the sort of the ultrasound money narrative, or the sort of issuance and so forth. And this is interesting. I'm not convinced it's number one. For some people, it's the main thing, and it's nice that the merge has so many benefits that people value in different ways. But this idea, because we're not paying for this huge power consumption, we can reduce the issuance of Ethereum dramatically by a factor of 10 or so, and alongside the EIP 1559 burn mechanism. So we produce Ether through paying validators now, and we burn Ether through people using Ethereum. And these two, under some circumstances, might equal each other, or one may dominate or the other. So potentially the total supply of Ether may go down with time. So these are the main effects, I think, of the merge, and there are various other sort of side benefits for usability and so forth, which are relatively minor.
Nice. I'd love to go deeper on the security and the ETH issuance and burn. I think the environmental impact is pretty clear. I think just the amount of energy consumption was reduced by 99 point something percent. So I think that's pretty kind of big and undeniable as a main effect. I've seen some just ridiculous arguments on Twitter saying now Ethereum can't be carbon negative. But I don't think those arguments are very valid, so I won't go into them. So on the security, can you just expand a bit on exactly why Ethereum is more secure under proof of stake than proof of work?
Yeah, so there are a number of factors, but fundamentally it's down to cost of attacking the chain. And by attacking the chain, we basically mean reverting transactions or changing the history of the chain. So under proof of work, your defense is that an attacker must have a higher hash rate, which translates to burn more power than the honest actors on the network. So, and we can sort of quantify that. You have to buy a certain amount of equipment to do that, and you have to expend a certain amount of power to do that. And finger in the air estimates put the cost of having attacked proof of work Ethereum at something around $5 or $6 billion in order to acquire the equipment and to power an attack which could revert the chain meaningfully. Whereas under proof of stake, you have to acquire the coins and stake them, and you have to, to affect the consensus, you need at least 1/3 of the total stake, and probably more. So you're looking at $10 billion plus of staked Ether. And of course, as you acquire that, the price goes up and so on and so on. So at least twice as strong currently with the amount of stake that we currently have on the Beacon chain, which is about $20 billion worth of Ether, about 13 million ETH. And, that's growing all the time. So that's a sort of just very kind of naive argument, which just demonstrates that already, even at this point when proof of stake is relatively new, we already have more security than we had under proof of work against effectively double spend attacks.
Perfect. And then on the Ethereum kind of issuance and burn, this kind of ultrasound money narrative or meme. I think this was kind of one of the most expected items by, I guess, traders and investors holding Ethereum. The idea being that, now that less ETH is needed to be issued to secure the network, then together with EIP 1559 and together with activity on the network, then ETH would become kind of deflationary. There would be more ETH burned than's being issued, and so with less supply, theoretically, that should impact the price. But that hasn't really happened yet, right? I think there was a very brief moment where there was more ETH being burned than issued, but it just it very quickly went kind of above that line, and we're still above it. So right now I'm looking at ultrasound.money, the website, and I'm seeing that now we are at about 600,000 ETH issued a year at this rate. And about half of that is being burned, so not quite kind of deflationary. what are kind of your thoughts on that kind of maybe disappointing a group of people within kind of the Ethereum community? How are you seeing that?
It was never a goal of the merge for Ether to become deflationary. I mean, that was never a design goal we were aiming for. So, it's a nice side effect, coupled with the IP 1559 that it dramatically reduces the net issuance of Ether. But the merge itself reduces the actual issuance of Ether by a factor of 10. So, it just so happens that at certain gas price levels that the 1559 burn can now offset that, whereas at previous levels it was very hard to offset it. And I can't work out if people want low gas or high gas prices. I mean, it sounds like people who want it to be deflationary are arguing, we want high gas prices because that'll make it deflationary, and then when gas prices go high, then we want low gas prices because nobody can use the network. So I can't work out what people want. I mean, the net the gas price at which more ETH is burned than is generated by the protocol is about 15 Gwei, as if I recall correctly. I think Ultrasound Money has that number. I'm quite happy in a 4 Gwei, 5 Gwei world where there's a little bit of net issuance. That's fine by me. But it was never a design goal for the merge to completely offset the issuance, and we'll see how it goes over time. I mean, there are competing things. More people will use layer 1, but also a lot of activities moving to layer 2, and that means lower gas price at layer 1, which means less burning and so on. So it will evolve over time, but is not a big deal for me. The fact that combined with a 10 times reduction in issuance, and then the 1559 burn, I mean, the net issuance is down by like a factor of 100 or something. This is fine. Seeing
that the same website has the ability to simulate a proof of work, and so the issuance would have been at about 5 million ETH a year right now, compared with 600,000. So it's a huge reduction in issuance, and it looks like the reason why ETH isn't deflationary, it's because we haven't reached that threshold of gas prices for ETH to be burned, which, like you say, it is a good thing in some ways, because it means that you can just use the Ethereum network for cheaper. In the last 10 years, over $100 billion worth of crypto has been lost or stolen, specifically because of poor key management, scams, and hackers. My new sponsor, ZenGo Crypto Wallet, wants to change the game entirely by creating a crypto wallet with no private key vulnerability. ZenGo aims to be the most secure Web3 wallet and the best place to keep your crypto, NFTs, and assets secure. After all, with no private key to steal, your crypto assets and NFTs are much more difficult to hack. Get started at zengo.com/defiant and use code DEFIANT to get $20 back on your first purchase of $200 or more. That's cengo.com/defiant. Terms and conditions apply, so check out their site for details. One of the biggest criticisms of the merge is that Ethereum Proof of Stake is becoming centralized. In Proof of Stake, some holders choose to delegate their ETH for entities to stake for them, as running a node might be inconvenient. As a result, these entities gather large sums of staked ETH. As of now, roughly half of staked ETH is coming from a handful of validators. What does Ben think about this?
I don't think we're worse off than we were under proof of work. What's fascinating is how the situation kind of mirrors where we were under proof of work with just, 4 or 5 mining pools controlling over half of the hash rate at that time. And in a sense, we're no worse off as we are under proof of stake. Bitcoin, the top 2 mining pools control 44%. of the hash rate. And it's exactly analogous. The amount of control that a mining pool has and a staking pool has over the network is basically, identical. So we're not worse off. And in some ways, I think we're better off for a couple of reasons. One of which is that it's now more possible for people to stake individually and stake in a more globally distributed way. There's absolutely no way I could have mined from home. The power costs would have been ruinous for me. Joining a mining pool is meaningless because that's not adding any decentralization to the network. So I had to solo mine, get, one block reward every 5 years or something. It would be absurd. So whereas I can stake from home, and I am meaningfully adding to the decentralization of the network, and I am in fact staking from home, and thousands and thousands of others who would never be able to meaningfully mine as solo miners. So in that sense, that option's there. It's up to the community if they want to take up that option. I very much hope over time that will be very much the dominant means of staking. But meanwhile, we have a lot of ETH on exchanges, and you mentioned Coinbase, for example, and they stake that on behalf of their customers. The other is just decentralization. Lido is an interesting one. They have about 30% of the network. How centralized are they? I mean, it's actually made up of 29 independent operators staking, on their own behalf, loosely coordinated by Lido, depending on your point of view. Some people see Lido as one entity that has full control over them, and that's fully centralized, and others see them as 29 independent operators who can basically come and go as they please and behave as they please. The truth is somewhere in between. So that 30% isn't sitting in one staking pool. Literally, is more nuanced than that. But the other advantage we have, and this comes back to the security thing that we were discussing earlier, we have more tools to deal with people who do wrong on the network. So everybody on the Ethereum proof of stake network has an identity, a pseudonymous identity. You have your public key of your validator. We know who runs a lot of the validators. The big staking pools are very obvious who they are and which ones they're running from, the where the deposits came from and so forth. So we know which, you quoted the numbers. We know which validators belong to Coinbase. We know which validators belong to Lido and Kraken and so forth. And if we don't like the way they're behaving on the network, for example, if they are censoring transactions which we feel should not be censored, then we have the power under proof of stake to take action. We can collectively agree to fork them off the network, a social slashing, as it were, because effectively they're breaking the rules of the protocol. If they are censoring transactions, that is breaking the consensus around the rules of the protocol. So getting kicked out of the protocol for breaking the rules is perfectly reasonable. Under proof of work, there is no mechanism to defend against that. If some miner starts behaving badly, you have no defense against that. So in a way that shores up the security of Ethereum and makes me sort of more confident that people will behave well, because nobody wants to be kicked out of the network on that scale. It is the nuclear option.
Can you explain how social slashing works?
So it's not a thing we've implemented, or not a thing that we have fully agreed a process for within the devs, but it is a possibility, right? And maybe the DAO fork back in the day is an example. The community came together, and the majority, shown by the ones who chose to run the DAO fork client, the majority decided, okay, this is a wrong that we wish to right. And we did a hard fork and voted with our feet. Those who wished to do that ran the DAO fork client, and those who didn't ran the original client. We've seen which one dominates. And effectively, it would be the same thing. It would be the Consensys clients. We would put out versions which say, support censored chain, support uncensored chain, or whatever the issue is that we are, coordinating around, and then it would be up to the stakers to run one of the other clients, and then it would be up to the users of the chain, the people who put assets on chain like USDC, and people who have NFTs on chain, and people who have all their accounts on chain, so forth, to decide which one is the real Ethereum, whether they want to follow the censored Ethereum or the uncensored one. And that's how blockchains work. That's how governance is done on blockchains. It's not the dev's chain; it's the user's chain. We give the options, and they can run that. And the uncensored chain would not recognize, would exclude the stakes, would effectively slash or eject the validators who are known to be censoring.
That would be something if it came to that, to kicking one of the centralized parties. Yeah. It
would be a horrific mess. I mean, it would be just horrible. And I can just imagine the conversations around it, and, not something to do lightly, but hopefully, the fact that we can do this, it is, literally like the nuclear threat, right? It's what keeps us safe, in the narrative of that is the fact that nobody would dare violate this thing. So having that threat hanging, I hope, will be enough. The fact that we can do this means we never need to do this, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And then moving on to just Teku itself, can you get into exactly, just going over the basics? What is an Ethereum client? And then on Teku, does it have a specific focus versus other clients?
So what we've done with this merge thing is we've brought together two Ethereum clients. So the clients are what run the network. So anyone who is participating in the network in any way needs to run a client. If you even if you want to send a transaction, you have to send your transaction to a client. Now, you might not be running it, but you might be sending it to Infura, but they're running clients. So it used to be the case there was just the ETH1 client, which is, Geth, used to be Parity. There's, became Open Ethereum. There's Nethermind, and there's Besu, which is the Consensys own client, and Eragon, which used to be TurboGeth. So those were running the Ethereum 1 network and maintained the state with all the accounts and all of the smart contracts and so forth. Now, alongside that, about a year and a half ago, it was December 2020, we built this beacon chain, which is a proof of stake network. And we have beacon chain clients, used to be known as ETH2 clients. And Teku is one of those. So you have Teku, Lighthouse, Lodestar, Prism, and Nimbus are the 5 production Consensys clients. And we've been running this proof of stake network, this beacon chain, since December 2020, and it's accumulated 13 million ETH of stake, securing it. But throughout most of that time, it's only been sustaining itself. It hasn't been running transactions at all. There've been no contracts on it and so forth. So with the merge, what we did is we combine the Consensys client with the execution client. So the ETH1 client and the ETH2 client get glued together, and we then turn off the proof of work mining side of things. So now the execution client listens to the beacon chain, the Consensys client, instead of listening to the proof of work miners. And that's how we brought about this. Is what happened last week when we did the merge. And you can couple these in any combination. So, my client I'm running Teku as the Consensys client and Besu as the execution client, and they are tightly coupled now as a kind of single Ethereum client entity that runs the network. But you can mix and match your Consensys. There are 20 different combinations of clients there. And these are what's running the network. And you need it if you're a staker, and you need it if you are running a dApp or, running an Ethereum node of any sort. You need both of these coupled together. Does that kind of answer your question, Cami?
Yeah. How are nodes distributed among these 5 clients? Is it more or less even, or is one client kind of dominating the rest?
Yeah, great question, because client diversity is really important to us, primarily to keep the network safe. I mean, under proof of stake, if there is a dominant client that goes wrong, then bad things can happen. You can finalize bad state transitions, which means basically your network is permanently messed up. So we try to avoid any dominant client. Dominant means over 2/3 share. It used to be the case back in January. Prism on the Consensys side had 70% plus of the network share, which was a little bit scary. We had a huge sort of education campaign about this over about 3 or 4 months, and large staking services and individual users diversified. They adopted other clients, and so we have a much more even distribution. The numbers, Prism still leads. I think it's 35%-ish. Lighthouse is second with something like 30%. Teku is there 17-18%. Nimbus, and then Lodestar. So we've got better distribution among Consensys side clients. It's still not ideal. It'd be lovely to see 20% each would be perfect, but it's definitely out of the danger zone. On the execution side, it's still very much dominated by Geth, which is Go Ethereum, the Ethereum Foundation's client. I don't have the numbers to hand, but it's something 70-75% Geth dominance. And yeah, I think it's fair to say other clients have been catching up for a while. Besu has not been a production mainnet client for 5, 6, 7 years like Geth has, and so it's coming up to speed in terms of performance and usability and so forth. And it's perfectly respectable. I'm running it, and it's flawless. I've had no issues whatsoever, but it just doesn't have that track record and that sort of user base and so on. And over time, as each client proves itself, then we will see a similar diversification, I think, on the execution client side. So that's how things are today.
And on kind of the Teku and Besu roadmap, or what you're building now, like what's coming up?
Yeah, so roadmaps are interesting because part of it is dominated by the big picture governance stuff. I mean, whatever the core devs decide, we have to implement. So that side of the roadmap, and then there's our own sort of what are the features and usability and performance and whatever things that we want to build into the clients ourselves. On the big picture side, we've got withdrawals coming. So anyone who's staking in Ethereum now, their stake is locked up indefinitely. And until we have implemented withdrawals, we took them out of the merge because just to simplify everything down to its sort of bare bones implementation. So we have that to do. And then there's a discussion around EIP 4844, which is, we call it proto-tank sharding. It's basically adding more data to blocks, which can be used by rollups to enhance the scalability of the whole system, layer 1, layer 2 system. And there's a whole bunch of EVM improvements that's been on the backlog for so long, and we need to start pushing those through and getting momentum on those as well. So those are big picture stuff that'll keep us happy for at least a year. I would have thought that bunch of stuff on there. Besu is currently working through a lot of performance enhancement things. I think Merge has revealed some areas that need a bit of work, and that's going through as we speak. And I mean, performance on both Consensys and execution side is always a challenge. There's a state management on the execution side, and we have a similar issue on the beacon chain on the Consensys side, because we started this chain with 26,000 validators, and now we're up to like 420,000. So it's grown like 15 times. And, every time there's more validators, it reveals another place in the code that slows things down, and we need to get on top. So it's constantly keeping on top of the optimization, and then hardening against network issues and just making sure everything is running smoothly. So always things to do. It's great.
The kind of all the grind behind making Ethereum actually work. So I guess for users, withdrawals is, top priority or top of mind for stakers. So is there, more specifics on when this is expected and kind of where in the development this is?
I don't want to sort of preempt the core dev governance process, and the current status is that there's a commitment to doing withdrawals in the first fork after the merge, the first upgrade after the merge, but we haven't decided, we haven't committed to the contents of that yet, and we haven't committed to a time frame yet. So everyone's taking a bit of a break. It's been all eyes on the merge for the last months, and everyone's a bit exhausted. Got DevCon coming up, so we're just taking a little pause. As soon as DevCon's done, we'll be fully back on things, and we'll start mapping out the next months and the next upgrade. Withdrawals is quite well spec'd. I think we have, we think we know how to implement this. We're sort of working low key on some implementations so that we can sort of just test that works. And there will be kind of two kinds of withdrawals. There'll be sort of ongoing, just siphoning off of excess balance, so that as your validator earns rewards, those periodically every few weeks will just get transferred to your fee recipient address. And then there will be full withdrawals where you exit the protocol completely, and then after a period of time you can actually take out your entire stake and rewards as well. I see it as pretty high priority. I think we need to make staking liquid. While it is not liquid, the providers who the large staking pools, the exchanges have an advantage, and I would like to have people to have the ability to unstake with those entities and to stake in maybe more decentralized pools, which weren't available when we started the Beacon chain, but now are, or even to solo validate. It's not hard. If I can do it, you can do it. I think we need, for this security and to give the chance for decentralization, we need to have withdrawals and the certainty that people can are not irrevocably committed indefinitely, that they can actually, if it doesn't work out, they can get out. That assurance is necessary.
Yeah, it's a good point that having withdrawals may increase, may decentralize this concentration of validators that we've seen, or at least make it more attractive for people to validate, to stake in other, more decentralized pools. So yeah. Okay. I think that's probably something that most people will be looking at for, just having a timeline. But you're right. Devs really do deserve a break and to enjoy DevCon. To swap crypto, a user has to choose among hundreds of dexes on multiple networks, all offering different rates and fees. Do you want to avoid that hassle? Swap on 1inch, a DEX aggregator built to get you better rates than any single DEX. Enjoy unlimited liquidity across multiple networks and top-level security. Get 1inch on your phone now or swap on 1inch.io. Oasis.app aims to be the most trusted entry point to the Maker protocol and to DeFi. Today, on Oasis app, you can do much more than just borrow DAI. You can also use Multiply to change exposure to your collateral and Earn to increase Uniswap v3 trading fee earnings with your DAI. And if you're an Oasis app user already, you can refer friends and get 5% of fees they generate in DAI forever. In the final part of our conversation, we discuss the price movement of ETH in relation to the merge. ETH price continues to drop due to the absence of a common narrative to look forward to, investors cashing out after the big news, and the macro backdrop. Ben shares his thoughts on the market and his perspective on the future of Ethereum.
Yeah, not going to lie, it's disappointing, but price is price. Number go up, number go down. I'm interested in long term. I think the the much reduced issuance will have a very nice impact on the much longer term. And there's all sorts of macro stuff going on as well. I think the interesting one is the ETH BTC ratio, right? I mean, I think that shows the premium of Ethereum value over perceived proof of work Bitcoin value. And it did run up quite significantly ahead of the merge. So, in favor of ETH ahead of the merge. I think it has dropped off since. I haven't actually checked recently, but for me, that's the one to watch. That sort of filters out the sort of the whole market up and down due to whatever interest rate decision or whatever inflation number comes out side of things, and then just compares the vision for either Bitcoin or Ethereum much more directly. So if I watch the markets closely, that's one I think I'd be most interested in.
We had this kind of peak here of ETH versus Bitcoin when September 7th. So when was that? I think that was like right before the merge.
Yeah,
right?
That's a week before the merge. So we did 15th was the merge date. Yeah. So we set the date for the merge effectively in July, and there's a massive run up after that, and then we dropped back about halfway. So that to me is somewhat encouraging. Shows that the market to a degree believes in the merge. But honestly speaking, looking at that, it's so noisy that you could draw more or less any conclusion.
Yeah, fair enough. It is still remarkable that ETH BTC is still holding up at pretty elevated levels. So amid just like this general market drop. Okay, and then just to start to wrap up, want to get your thoughts on just the longer term picture for Ethereum. So, I think the vision for Ethereum is to become this global settlement layer, right? Kind of the old kind of world computer analogy. The merge and like proof of stake is important in that roadmap, in having this global settlement layer be environmentally friendly and more secure. But there's still a major piece missing, which is having Ethereum be more scalable to allow for this settlement layer to happen. So just in this broader vision for Ethereum, where do you think we are at? What's next and what's missing, and where do you see kind of Ethereum playing in kind of the global scheme of things in the future and kind of the long term?
Sure. This merge feels in some ways like the end of a journey. I mean, we've been working towards this thing for years, almost exclusively, and is dominated my last few years for sure. But in other ways, we're just at the beginning of a journey. I mean, this is sort of the first deliverable in the sort of ETH2 roadmap, as it were, such as it is now. And there's so much more. I mean, I'm sure you've seen Vitalik's, it's not really a roadmap, but his sort of vision diagram for Ethereum with the verge and the splurge and the purge and all of that. And, this is not a sequential roadmap. It's not like the roadmaps and Gantt charts I used to deal in, but it's a set of aspirations of parallel work streams, shall we say, to be delivered over a lengthy time frame. I mean, potentially 10 years. And the whole point is to get Ethereum to a point where it is infrastructure for the planet, like the internet is today. And you don't say, right, I'm going to go and use the internet. You use applications, right? And you don't even think about what's behind them. When you're using whatever, WhatsApp on your phone or whatever it is, you're not thinking about the technology underneath. It's just there and you take it for granted. And, we succeed when Ethereum in particular is like that. It's just underpinning a suite of applications that people use to transact trustlessly with each other. And we're moving towards that goal. So to achieve that sort of planetary scale and decentralization goals, we need to do things like vastly increase scalability. So this is via the layer 2 approach, where the Ethereum blockchain itself provides a security layer, a sort of settlement layer and a data availability layer for the whole system, but its scope is very limited. We rely on outside the protocol means these roll-ups, these L2 solutions, to deliver massive scalability, and they can do that in parallel. And already today we see, Optimism and all the other ones, Arbitrum and ZK Sync and Starknet and all of these layer 2 solutions starting to come into production and take the load off the mainnet. And that's route 1 now. That's not just something interesting happening on the margins. That is the scalability plan for Ethereum, is to the base layer. We provide secure data availability, and these rollups build on that to deliver thousands to tens of thousands of transactions per second. So that's one part of it, but also we need to make it much easier for people to run the base network, to secure the base network globally. So things like this purge, removing this massive state, making Ethereum stateless is, a huge goal. I think probably as ambitious as the merge that we've just done in terms of its scope. But that will then, my toaster and your refrigerator will be able to run Ethereum nodes and secure the network under that sort of vision. There's so much more. A single slot finality. There's proposer builder separation. There's account abstraction. There's just this huge vision for making Ethereum better. And there is an endpoint, right? I mean, we don't have to deliver any of it. I mean, now we're on proof of stake. Ethereum can go on, but our ambition is to be much bigger than where we are today. And so, if we deliver 60, 70% of this, I think, Ethereum is sustainable for decades to come.
Awesome. Love that. Just really kind of long-term overview of what's next. And I think it'll just be fascinating to see how you build all of that, especially with this distributed structure that we talked about before.
That's a challenge.
Also, I'm just seeing that you have my book on the background, and I'm just noticing it. But I just wanted to thank you. That's so amazing to see. Yay!
Terrific book. Thank you for writing that. Love it. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. And thanks for joining me. This has been a fascinating discussion. Really learned a lot about the merge. I'm sure that our listeners did too. And I'd love to have you back to discuss all of the other implications that I'm sure we'll see in the coming months. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Camilla. It's been a real pleasure. Great to speak to you.
Likewise.